Ingram Smith, Bud Elliott, back again for another episode of the Nolecast. Coming out of the bye week, Bud. Georgia Tech plays host, Florida State plays host to Georgia Tech. Noon game here on Saturday. If you watched the Georgia Tech Virginia game, one, I apologize just on behalf of college football in general, but it was one of the worst performances that you can see. We'll try to give you an idea as to whether or not you'll see a repeat performance like that from Georgia Tech and their offense, or if this may play a little bit more competitively as historically this rivalry has. Rivalry, I don't know if you want to call that, but grouping, and certainly could have been a potential rivalry had the ACC not murdered it and have these teams play each other as less frequent as they do. So off my personal soapbox in 49 seconds and into the Nolecast, Bud. Let's do a game preview here.
No doubt. Thank you, Tarpon Sellers, for sponsoring us, as always, making this podcast possible. All right. So for those of y'all who do not know anything about Georgia Tech, which everybody's podcast is somebody's first. So, or every podcast is somebody's first. Is that how we should say that? Maybe. Georgia Tech is 3-4 on the year. They fired Jeff Collins. Brent Key's been the interim coach since the Pitt game. So 3 games now. They are 2-1 under interim coach Brent Key. Seem to be playing a little bit harder for him, maybe a little more chemistry there. I think Ingram would probably agree within that program without Collins. Let's give a little rundown of what you're getting here. SP Plus has them 89th in the country. I mean, clearly they've been playing a little bit better than that recently, but also the game against Virginia was just, that was like bleach in your eyes. So I kind of feel like I know what to expect, but I'm lying to y'all if I say I know exactly what to expect, given just how up and down this Georgia Tech team has been. Also, my internet might be kind of weird tonight.
Well, yeah, Georgia Tech's been up and down. There's some ambiguity as to what their quarterback situation will be, and their quarterback is as up and down as a player that I've watched in all of college football this season. So why don't we start more with what it looks like when Florida State has the ball? This is the better half, certainly, of the Georgia Tech team. Kind of a fun little unit, Bud. I enjoy watching them. I've always watched a good amount of Georgia Tech football, just being out of Atlanta. But I don't know. I've watched, for one reason or another, pretty much every snap that Georgia Tech's taken this year. And their defense is, it's aggressive. That is their former head coach's background. And it is the unit of the team that does, if they've got a average to above average unit, this is it. Certainly not on the other side of the ball, but it's a 4-2-5. Like their linebackers, their best defensive player, in my opinion, is number 1, Charlie Thomas. But he's a 6'3", 210-pound linebacker. I mean, that's kind of a safety who's trying to play linebacker, and
he moves around pretty well.
He moves great, but he's almost an elongated Kendall Pope, if you want to have a 20-year-old reference. But he's undersized and makes plays and occasionally gets blocked as well. But it's a fun defense, aggressive defense. Everybody does this in the year 2022, but Tech does it to an extent that you see them actually lose a lot of tackles opportunities, and the fact that they will kind of half tackle you, half rip on almost every chance they get. And just a quick off the hip observation, wouldn't surprise me if you didn't see Johnny Wilson or Trey Benson find an extra 15 or 20 yards based off the fact that these guys go for as much ball as they do ball carrier.
100%. You had some guys picked out you've watched this year. Tell us about Keon White, defensive end.
Keon White, number 6. Keon White is a transfer from Old Dominion. I went and actually looked at his bio a couple days ago, trying to figure out more how somebody that looks like Keon White ended up at Old Dominion, because Keon White looks like he could play at Bama or Georgia. If you're not familiar with this guy, he is he's who you want walking off the bus first, certainly. Number 6, if you're a fan of single-digit numbers, you will also like Georgia Tech's defense, because almost every player that is average or above average wears one. You can tell that might have been a motivating tool, or for a guy who had many gimmicks up his sleeve. Jeff Collins seemed to use that one as well. But almost every player I'll talk about here is a single-digit guy. Just rambling. Keon White looks like Bama. Doesn't necessarily always play like that, but a really interesting guy that you'll notice immediately will occasionally flash, but is more just kind of a physical specimen who happens to play defensive end.
I think that makes a lot of sense. Also, Marcus Scott, number 8, does a pretty nice job for them inside. They have some fundamental building blocks on this defense. It's not like this defense actually has been playing fairly well since Jeff Collins left, right? So, I mean, they lost to Ole Miss 42-0, and then they played kind of respectably at UCF and lost 27-10. UCF's not a bad offense this year. And then they beat Pitt 26-21, which honestly was just, and it's kind of a fluky win. They had like a long fumble return. That game had a ton of rain. Their best offensive play was a really great one-handed catch that was preceded by a ridiculous push-off that went uncalled. Now, they did have a lot of nice defensive plays by this unit, which is, to their credit. I'm more just kind of bashing the offense here. This is like not a terrible defense. They're not good, but they're not terrible. They do a couple things fairly well, but there's some building blocks for it. And if you are looking to put down some building blocks for a home for you, or maybe just get into a new home or refi, best place to do that, in my opinion, is Legendary. And I put my money where my mouth is on this, as well as about 400 Nolecast listeners have as well. I've used Chad and Shannon twice. Legendary team gets it done for me. I think you'll get it done for you too if you give them a call, 844-FSU-LOAN. That's 844-FSU-LOAN. Best rates and customer service in the business for my money. So a couple other observations we have here, and because we're doing this late Thursday, we want to make this as digestible as possible. So this show will not be an hour tonight. It'll probably be more in that half-hour range. They do love to blitz, as you noted, but they also seem to not allow explosive plays in kind of a weird fashion. And I've gone back and I've watched some of their highlights and I've watched some of their clips, and I feel like they blitz to get the ball out of your hand fast, not necessarily blitz to sack, right? And that has led to them being decent in the interception department as well. So something we'll have to watch for there. Now, this year, they've actually been a really bad run defense overall. Like, teams have stayed ahead of the chains consistently, and they rate as a really good pass defense. But I looked into this, and I do wonder if there's something going on here, man. So just stay with me here. So again, if you're following along at home, Georgia Tech's defense rates really good against the pass and really poorly against the run. Maybe there's some signal to this noise, and I think there might be a little bit if you watch them. But also, all right, so they got this really nice pass defense rating. Clemson was couldn't get out of its own way in the opening ball game, right? They dropped like 5 passes. They had some communication errors up front, and they sort of started this narrative that DJ wasn't good. And then it turns out, like, up until last week, he was leading the country in depth, just accuracy, and some other stuff. So West Carolina's whatever. Ole Miss this year is a heavy run team. I mean, like heavy run team. So certainly possible that maybe that skews them a little bit. Ole Miss was still trying to figure out what to do. And Lane Kiffin even said, well, we were running it so well, we didn't really want to embarrass it and throw it on them. So, Pitt doesn't even believe the forward pass should exist. So that's kind of another really kind of skewed thing here. Duke actually is a team that throws the ball pretty well, and they did beat Duke 23-20. I think was that a rainy game as well? It went to overtime. I'm trying to recall. And then last week against UVA doesn't really run or pass. They just don't block anybody and kind of let you into their backfield immediately. I guess what I'm saying here is, guys, I'm not saying like this is a good defense because I don't really think that it is. There are a couple nice players here. They do seem to make you earn it. They don't give up a lot of explosives. And they're probably not quite so good against the pass and probably not quite so bad against the run. It's more likely to me, just observing a little bit of their highlights, some of their games, and their schedule, that these ratings are a product of the fact that they have played a lot of run-first, good running teams that are not necessarily great at throwing the football this year.
Yeah, it's interesting when you talk about the fact that they blend a fairly aggressive style and also, don't give up a whole lot of massive plays. And I do think that, Collins is a it makes a caricature of himself frequently. But that is the area in which his probably professional future lies, is being a defensive coordinator and a defensive mind,
Yeah.
and he puts together a decent defense. And um, some of his more high profile recruiting wins are no longer on the roster, but he also decent evaluations. And when you, just to circle back to what I said originally, when you watch this defensive play, it's kind of fun to watch aesthetically. They're aggressive. They play in a manner that you can appreciate. At the same time, they're kind of 6.5 out of 7, or 6.5 or 7 as a unit. Florida State should be able to run the ball on these guys. Florida State should be able to dictate an awful lot of what they do. And they're a 4-2-5 defense that has a one linebacker that's 6'3", 209, and they don't really have that safety that is a linebacker masquerading as a safety to offset it. You know what I'm saying? Like, the guy that is their more physical safety is, I think, 6'2", 182 or something like that. This should be a team that Florida State should be able to use a lot of its core running philosophies and more or less dictate what they're doing.
I agree. And I know that some folks think that Florida State is a really good run team. I think that they are a very effective run team against certain looks, and that's probably why they're not quite as good in the red zone, because those looks do not appear as frequently in the red zone. But who knows? Maybe Georgia Tech's front is not able to control you quite as much. I do think you should be able to run the football on these guys. I'm not going to make Georgia Tech into something that it's not. I'm not going to come out here and tell you, like, hey, like, they've sucked an equal amount every single game, right? And neither will you. They do some things well. They are, like, really, really good in pressure rate, actually. Like, they're 10th in the country in pressure rate. So that's interesting. Florida State is bottom 15 in pressure rate allowed. They just seem to not, like, those don't always get converted into sacks, which I think Jordan is better about this season ultimately. But yeah, man, like, Florida State should be able to score points here. I think I have FSU scoring like 35, maybe 37, 38. So like, if they hit 40, it wouldn't totally shock me. But to do that, they would probably need some turnovers. And that may be where we need to, like, turn the page here and talk about Georgia Tech's offense, because Georgia Tech's defense is much better, in my estimation, than this offense. This offense is, it could use some work.
For an offense that has had, be it triple option and something that looked like, football out of the early 1940s or something like that, was incredibly productive. If you're a younger fan, you may not have an appreciation for, like, what Georgia Tech actually was in the late 90s. For a period of time there, they were far and away Florida State's biggest coastal rival. And they had an incredible offense with George O'Leary. Joe Hamilton was the backup, or the runner-up, for the Heisman. Long story short, for a team that is a pretty proud program and has been very good on offense, this is something that is kind of an embarrassment to the effort right now, particularly if Sims is not going to go. If Sims is not your quarterback, there's some defensive linemen that can, how we used to, like, laugh and say that guys would have their pro tape, like 5 of the plays would be against Florida State offensive tackles.
The Juwan Williams special.
Yeah, the Juwan. Yes, exactly. The money tape that Juwan Williams provided others. Georgia Tech will do that for your defensive line. Like, Farmer will feel very good about himself, or has the potential to. You can find young guys opportunities here when we're talking about what the defense does and how the defensive line fares against this offensive line. I'm fascinated to see how they handle the rotation, man. I'm just kind of armchair quarterbacking it. But if you have Fabian Lovett available, do you give him 8 to 12 snaps, 8 to 14 snaps or something like that against a defensive line like this? Let him get a little bit of confidence. Same thing goes for Jared Verse. Certainly think Florida State wins the matchup here. I think the more interesting subplot is how they work some of their guys back in, and if some of these younger players who have shown some really nice flashes can do so more consistently against an offensive line that, by all accounts, should provide you many an opportunity to flash.
I agree with that. So a couple things to know about this offense, right? Obviously, Ingram profiled Jeff Sims there. He, I think, was hurt going into that Virginia game and had to exit. I can't imagine that he's super healed up in 1 week. So if you're Georgia Tech, like you want to win the ball game, but you're also a 24.5 point underdog now since it's crept up at the time of this taping. Then that seems like a lot, and it is. Like that's a pretty huge spread for a conference ball game. Jeff Sims is also your leading rusher, and that is part of what makes him good, right? He has 301 rushing yards on the year when you take out the sacks on 84 design carries plus scrambles. Hassan Hall is not a bad back for you. There's really only one thing that Georgia Tech does well, and it's hit explosive runs. They don't hit explosive pass plays. They do not consistently run the football well. They just occasionally pop a big one. And they definitely do not consistently throw the football well and stay ahead of the chains with it. I mean, in fact, they are just, I think I put some stats in the notes here, that there's a lot of stuff they do that is just absolutely horrendous. They're 128th in the nation in havoc rate allowed. I think that is a combination of offensive line talent, but also just their communication errors. This offense looks poorly coached to me, right? I mean, like really badly coached. I'm not really sure what they're doing at times. Part of that's just probably a lot of new moving pieces, and they're in an interim situation now. But and on the opening night, they had to play Clemson's defense, so that was tough. And Ole Miss's defense we thought was a little better at the time. Maybe Georgia Tech being this bad skewed our perception on just how good Ole Miss's defense actually was. But man, I mean, like their number one receiver on the team has 34 catches and 345 yards, McCollum. Hassan Hall is actually a pretty decent back, I think. Like he's a good player. He's not, I don't think he's like a surefire NFL stud or anything like that. But you know, it's worth watching. They had a couple offensive linemen get dinged up in that game at Virginia, but I don't think they actually like left the game. They, as far as I know, I don't think they have anybody who's actually out for them here. But I mean, dude, they just, oh, did I tell you? They actually, and by the way, they base out of you know, just kind of standard spread stuff. They'll try to use some tight end, not really effectively. They do some misdirection. I thought the Gibson kid, the guy who came in for Sims, I actually thought he was a great portal get. I mean, he was a guy from Atlanta coming home. He did a nice job at Akron last year in a really tough situation, I thought. But in that game, he was just terrible. And I don't think Virginia's defense is better than what the Noles have. UCF will, or excuse me, not UCF. Georgia Tech will probably have a better just look coming out, I would think, because they have a week to prep with Gibson in. Brent Key, their head coach, also said a pretty good shot that the true freshman gets some snaps in this game as well. So who knows who plays?
They got a 4-star kid out of Alabama last year that they're excited about. Yeah, I think you'll see him. The guy I've got a guy who this year has given me pretty good information about Georgia Tech. He thinks that Sims is going to try to go and, doubts that he's able to play a full game on his ankle. Georgia Tech's coming off a Thursday night game, but a bye previously. So, obviously, if you re-injure an ankle 9 days ago or whatever, you still have to go through that. But Georgia Tech's played one game in the last 22 days or something like that. So, if he's got the ability to go, he's going to go. And my point here is that historically, Georgia Tech plays Florida State really well. And a large part of that is the vast majority of their roster is made up of Georgia and Florida guys. These are kids that, weren't recruited by Florida State or, maybe got some early contact and faded off. You just always get, Georgia Tech's best representation. And whether that be a stupid game that you lose in the middle of the jumbo run off a blocked field goal, or Ernie Sims's brother fumbling on the 1.5 yard line or whatever else. There's been some wild moments, and I do think that you'll get a better Georgia Tech team than kind of what we are all situated, or what we're all sitting here in our head after coming off that Thursday night game against Virginia. Nonetheless, this team and its components are exceptionally limited, and maybe some kind of great rally around the interim fades after your first loss, but I still think this team will come out and show much better than what you expect, having seen what they put on tape recently.
I agree with that. A couple things here that I want to point out as well. Number one, teams do not seem to blitz Georgia Tech all that much. And I think it's for good reason, because
Why do
You
you
just
need
kind of
to?
yeah, I really think it's kind of just like, I know we have said that Fuller's defense this year, and I think we've accurately said, we've said it for about a month now, and some people didn't like it, and that's okay. We don't have to all agree. This is not a like beating our chest type thing. There's plenty we get wrong, but we've kind of called this the bend and break defense. I'm not sure it has to break this week, but I would let it bend some. You know, if Georgia Tech gets a first down or two on a drive, I don't think that's the end of the world, guys.
Mm-hmm.
They are not real heavily penalized offensive line wise, but they do commit a fair amount of offensive penalties. They also just don't look well coached. I mean, I don't. Uh, oh shoot! I mean, now I'm not. Now I'm gonna have to Google the guy because this is. I had his name, and now I'm like, what? You know, shoot.
While you're doing that, I will just mention that obviously this game is being played at noon, like we talked about, and that kind of changes your schedule and everybody's schedule. And it also gives you a much better opportunity to enjoy our friends at Charlie Park. We normally talk about, hey, if you get there Friday night or a Saturday, or excuse me, a Sunday brunch. And both of those are great options and things that we would encourage you to do. But with a noon game, you get the chance to go up there and enjoy sunset hours. Recently, the sunset and color of the sky has been absolutely bonkers, and hopefully that carries through the weekend. But yeah, you got a little bit of a different window with it being a noon home game, and we ask that you please keep our friends at Charlie Park in mind. And whether it be Friday night or the brunch, we would recommend reservations. On a Saturday, you may be able to just come and go as you please, but if you want to go up there and have a bite to eat or something like that, would recommend reservations for that as well.
Okay, so their OC's name is Chip Long, and if you've heard that before, he was actually on staff with Mike at Arizona State from 2012 to 2015, and then Mike took him with him to Memphis in 2016, and then he got the Notre Dame offensive coordinator job, and then got fired, and then was a quality assistant on, I think, Pruitt's staff. 2020 Tennessee would have been Pruitt's staff, right? Yeah. And then he went to, I think, Tulane last year, and that did not work out at all. And now he is at Georgia Tech. I mean, guys, they do not look well coached at all on offense. I think that the proper plan here is to see if your front four can win, whether that's McClendon or Peyton or Turner or Verse or whomever. You know, maybe Lovett plays a lot, maybe he doesn't play at all, maybe he plays a little. I do think that there's a really good chance that if you deny Georgia Tech explosive plays, that they will just mess up. They do not seem to be able to put together drives at all. I bet you that like the number of actual, touchdown drives of 7+ plays this year is, I can probably count it on one hand against FBS, like before garbage time, in actual competitive settings. They are kind of that bad when it comes to that. I mean,
Did you say they were last in the nation in red zone touchdowns? I can't
oh
remember if
yes,
you said
yes, I
that
did.
or on a
Yeah,
phone call
yeah,
earlier today, but yeah, I mean
yeah.
that's as
They
good
are
of a stat as you can
131st.
reference that.
They
Yeah.
scored touchdowns in the red zone 29% of the time.
29%. Okay. Well, that'll make
So,
your
like I
feelings hurt
said,
if they start
make
scoring
them win in the red zone.
6 on
Let's
Saturday.
bend but don't break. This is the Fuller's like, we got it this week,
This
boys.
this is the week we've been waiting for. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, man, that's kind of, I think there's a good shot that you get a lot of penetration on these guys. They'll have to tackle well. You just don't want to have busts. I'm sure they'll have something kind of special cooked up for you, maybe, but maybe I should not use the word I'm sure, because I'm actually not sure of that. They could just be a dead team walking who was playing hard for their interim coach, but now it's an interim. They still have a shot to make a bowl game, I guess. They're 3-4, but I think it's somewhat unlikely that they do following last week's game. I mean, I'm looking. I always feel like I try to hit everything, but I mean, man, 124th in standard down success rate, so that's not the best, right? Their passing down success rate is somehow better. Oh, here's something. They actually do throw the ball a lot on early downs, just they don't do it very well. And they run a lot of draws, screens, that kind of stuff on passing downs. So you can't just be hair on fire going after these guys. That's probably not what you want. You do need to kind of have, and I hate watching this, but it's kind of the prudent plan here. You need to have that controlled rush to where you're also kind of cognizant of the draw and the screen, especially if Sims is in there.
Yeah.
Like, would you even play Sims if he can't move around though? I don't know, man. I'm a little skeptical on that.
I think it's more an issue of a Florida kid really wanting to play against Florida State, and I think it's more the individual than necessarily how the team wants to or how coaches want to use him. And you kind of gotta you don't obviously you got the final say, and you don't just want to bend to a kid's will, but obviously this is a kid that was committed to Florida State. I don't think he was necessarily told to leave, but he was probably had a more honest conversation with Mike Norvell during the recruiting process than he did any other coach. He's going to try to go, in my opinion. And I don't think as a interim coach who's desperate to try to get a locker room fully behind him and try to have as good a showing as possible is going to necessarily keep him off the field. So I think you'll see him. Maybe not. Maybe he just wakes up Saturday and the ankle just screams, I can't even, make it work, or whatever the coach said in Varsity Blues, that he had a way of encouraging guys to explore the limits of pain tolerance. Yes.
It would be really fun to sit in on the meeting this week because Fuller has sat down with Norvell since Chip Long was his OC for that 1 year at Memphis, right, in 16, and said, hey, like, what do you remember Chip liking to do, and what are they not able to do, and why, based on what we've seen here, right? And I mean, probably offensive line, quarterback, receiver, maybe some crucial components there. Maybe they get some trick plays out of this. Maybe they get some real tendency breakers. I'm not sure. That's all the more reason just to not try to get, not to just sell out for tackles for loss. Just kind of play it back a little more. Let Georgia Tech self-destruct. You should score enough on these guys to not have a super sweat in the fourth quarter.
Yeah,
I think.
One thing you'll never have to super sweat is pairing with Matt Lewis and the team at Congruity. Matt Lewis is exceptional, and I know you probably get tired of me saying that, but I get an email once a week of somebody saying that, and really excited about an announcement I think we'll be able to make next week about I think the largest entity that has paired with Congruity in their partnership, the history of their partnership with Nolecast, and got some great Seminole leadership in that group and fun to discuss moving forward. But I have firsthand experience with Matt and his team. We, as a very small business, Bud and I have nothing but positive things to say with our own firsthand experience with Matt Lewis, whether it be payroll, HR, anything that can allow your business to run in a more efficient and optimal manner. CongruityHR.com is the website. And whether it be a DM or an email, I'm always more than happy to make an introduction if that is the path that you as the listener would like to go out or go about as far as reaching out to Matt and his team at Congruity.
All right, man. Quick things here, special teams wise. Georgia Tech's punting is terrible. They really
bad.
Yeah. Every time you force a punt, you're probably going to be like net 7 or 8 yards in field position over expected.
Yeah, I mean, you've also got like a 22% chance of blocking it. That stat's probably
how many
a little
they
bit
had
of hyperbole.
Blocked? It's a couple, right?
I mean, they had, to the point, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but when the interim took over, he specifically had to address the punt situation in the conference of like, hey, I know this is embarrassing. We're going to get it fixed. Now, part of that's skewed because what did they get? 2 blocked against Clemson or something like that? But they've had more. I mean, they had a punt block last weekend. Now, it happened to, get blocked and then take like a 28-yard spin on it. So statistically, it didn't scream blocked punt. But the snap is a little bit slow getting back there, and the punter's a little bit slow in getting it off. And he also starts in this kind of direct line of walking towards the line of scrimmage in the process. And it's led to one of the more shaky special team units out there, and was legitimately, the head coach got fired for a litany of reasons. But when you consistently fail to get a punt off, when the simple things go awry, the fan base gets the angriest, and that has been a disaster since the first punt attempt against Clemson this year.
Yeah, man. I mean, I'm looking at this. Half of their punts this year are returned, which is a lot. I mean, I'm telling you guys, that's not normal. only 20% end up inside the opponent's 20. So not great. Hang time is under 3.5 seconds, which probably suggests there's a good reason why these get returned. And they are averaging a net of only 35 yards, which is just not going to get it done. So if you're going to pull the blowout this weekend, the onus is really, I think, on Adam Fuller's defense to either create some turnovers or force a lot of punts, not allow Georgia Tech to get too many first downs, and force some field goals, and be able to build that comfortable lead. I'm not saying the offense won't or shouldn't do a good job against this defense. I'm just there is a noticeable difference between Georgia Tech's offense is, to me, a lot worse than its defense.
Mm-hmm. All right, Ben. Anything else we want to speak on as far as game preview? Recruiting, found out today you won't have one prospect there as far as the IMG kid that reclass, but I do think you're going to get the Ricks won't be there. I do think you're going to get the running back there that Baxter, the Texas commit, former longtime ago Florida State commit. So be another opportunity to put a foot forward in a game that Vegas certainly thinks you're going to win comfortably. So, Bud, I guess this brings us to our prediction part of the preview. I'll go first here. I see something like Florida State 37, Georgia Tech 14.
I'll go like 38-17, I guess. But I don't have a whole lot of confidence in that they're going to be over 50 points. I think about it. I think you will probably get a short field score or two here, most likely just based on the trends of watching this Georgia Tech offense. If you take care of the football, you should have a comfortable win here. If you don't take care of the football, or if you just make a lot of dumb mental errors, then you might be in a dogfight. So take care of the ball and play a clean game. I also wonder, how long are you going to be dropping Jordan back a lot, or is it more just handing the ball off and throwing some quick stuff if you are up towards the end of this game? Because you do have a look-ahead spot here to Miami, and Jordan's already had an injury this year. So how much do you want to run him and put him at risk in this ball game? I don't know. That could bring us to our Prize Picks segment, by the way, if you want to do that.
Oh, our friends at Prize Picks. Absolutely a blast that we've had here. Let me pull up the numbers. I was looking at them earlier in the day.
I've got them here if you want.
Okay, please. Of course you do.
All right. So we have some numbers here for Jordan Travis. Just to start again, prizepicks.com. Download the Prize Picks app. Use your promo code Nolecast. Get your 100% deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks is a fun way to play a little daily fantasy. Just pick some combos that you seem to like, maybe make them correlated if you want to, and then watch along. We'll give you just a couple thoughts here on the FSU numbers, and then we will tweet out our official Nolecast Prize Picks card on Friday. We've actually done really shockingly well on these this year. We're not going to win every week. Just going to tell you guys that's not a realistic expectation, but we will have fun every week. So with that, let's get into this. Jordan Travis, 18.5 pass completions. Jordan Travis, 235.5 passing yards, 40.5 rush yards, 275 passing plus rushing yards, 21.5 fantasy score, 2 pass touchdowns, 1.5 interception, 55.5 receiving yards for Johnny Wilson, 10.5 fantasy score for Johnny Wilson. Again, this is like PPR scoring. So if you get a catch, it's a point. If you guys play any fantasy football at home, or girls, you probably understand that. Receiving touchdown, 6 points. Rushing touchdown, 6 points. When we say fantasy score, that's what that means. Micah Pittman, 42.5 receiving yards, and Micah Pittman, 8.5 fantasy score. I will tell you, I actually kind of think Jordan under rushing yards. 40 is a bit of a big number. Like, to get over 40, you either need a really, really big scramble, or you need to not get sacked very much. And there's still some intent to that. Like, they're going to have to be running the quarterback a good bit to hit that. So I would probably lean under on Jordan's rushing yards, man. And
interesting.
Do you think you're going to run him a lot?
21 is a score, 21 and a half is a score that you can, hold on. I'm going to hold quarterback scoring. Okay. If I'm going to debate give me a little more time on the Jordan Travis fantasy score. We'll put that in the update. What I do like at looking at this is Micah Pittman's fantasy
Yeah,
score, 8.5. That is the one that stands out to me on first look, and that is if you want to have one of these picks on your card just to go, pro FSU and enjoy the game even more. I think the safest bet at this point is Pittman at 8.5 over.
completely agree. I'm scanning now for some Georgia Tech. I don't even know if they have any up yet.
I think they had Hassan Hall earlier, but I think that was it. Let me see.
I'm not even seeing Hall at this point, man.
Yeah.
They
No,
may have just pulled it because they don't know
Georgia
who's going to
Tech.
play.
Yep. Don't see
for
any Georgia Tech
quarterback.
stuff. That may not change. You may not have a whole lot of Georgia Tech on the board here. So
yeah, I would agree with that.
Give me a little QB rushing number that I can take the under on. It's particularly if you know that you're getting a quarterback not named Jeff Sims. So
exactly. All right, man. Enjoyed it tonight. We got anything else we need to hit?
That's all that I've got here. We'll obviously get back into the season stride here, and cheers to not having to do an instant reaction at 12:20 in the morning. It does look like we'll be back doing that next Saturday, so that's always fun. But look for a nice little noon game here. Hopefully Florida State gets back on track, goes to 5 wins, and we kick off a incredibly important stretch with the first of either 4 or 5, whatever would constitute a great end of the season here. And in my opinion, it starts on Saturday, and we'll be back with an instant reaction to tell you whether or not that comes to fruition. So as always, thank you. This has been the Nolecast. We'll talk to you soon.